The guest speakers.
Good evening. Could I ask everyone to please take a seat? Welcome to Empower You. I'm Betty Overstreet, the Executive Director. And you know we're not back in session yet, so this is very encouraging. We have so many people here tonight. We have a good crowd online. So I guess what that tells me, now that the holidays are over, everybody's ready to get active again. So we added this class because it's an important topic. And I'm just glad you're here. I just want to go over a few things. If you're new to Empower You, this is your first class, I just want to tell you that we do operate on donations only. And if you would like to contribute to what we do, there's several ways that you can do that. Of course, if you're in the studio, we have little red buckets we always pass around. If you'd like to put in $1 or $2, it's very helpful. When you sign up online, there is a button on there where you can donate, or you can go to our website. There's a donate button on there. We appreciate anything that you can give. Also, tonight there will be questions at some point in time. If you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for one of us to bring a microphone to you. If you aren't speaking into a microphone, the people online can't hear you and the people in back of you can't hear you. If you're online and you have a question, go down to the bottom of your screen to the Q&A button, put your question in there, and our producer will pick that up for you. You can tell I'm not ready. I'm not ready till February 24th, by the way. That's when we're going to start. We just had our board meeting on Tuesday to select the classes we are going to do, and we got some exciting things coming up. So I hope you will all be back. We have some door prizes to give away tonight. Get out your little ticket that you were given when you came in. And I'm going to ask our guest over here to pick one out. Last three numbers, 0, 0. I think this is a 5. Anybody got a 0, 0, 5? 5, 0, 0, 5. Nobody has that? You're going to be sorry. I'm going to have another ticket drawn unless somebody speaks up right now. Did I say, somebody say they have 005? Oh, sorry, this one is 931. Anybody got 931? Last 3 digits on your ticket. Here, we have a $50 gift certificate to Wild Birds Unlimited over in Forest Park. Congratulations.
That's a great gift.
You're welcome. Also, for our online audience, we also have a door prize for you. You don't need to do anything. A name will be chosen from those of you that are registered. I don't have it here in the studio, but we're going to be giving you the Real Anthony Fauci book by Robert Kennedy. And whoever gets that book has to read it and come in and do a class on it. So don't let that scare you, but we'll send that book to you. Dan, if you would come up now. Dan Reginald, I think everybody here knows Dan. He's the founder of Empower You. We couldn't operate without him.
Hello, hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Happy New Year to you. So yeah, like Betty said, we usually don't get started till the middle of February. So just a little bit about what Empower You is. Do we have any first-time attendees tonight? Well, good, glad you're here. Empower You is just a series of free classes where we just try to help you get more empowered in your life. by doing things to help educate you, have fun ideas, and have areas where we can get engaged in. Like tonight, we've got Marta Nowak with us. Marta, would you raise your hand? Marta's right back there. And at the end of tonight's class, she'll be at the table on your way out if you're passionate about the issue of mask mandates and you want to sign the petition. I think this is the third effort to get something on the ballot. Stop by and see Marta, sign your name, and that's one way you can get engaged if that's a subject you want to talk about. So our board met on Tuesday night to go over our list of classes that start on February the 23rd. And we're really going to have some great classes. And I just really look forward to when that starts. So put that date on your calendar, February 23rd. And I was just shocked how many people signed up online tonight to attend this class. And it made me really happy because Michael and I have been working a long time on it. And just the fact that we don't do great with education classes sometimes, but so many people are starting to get it, that there is a monopoly in education and we have to mix things up. Things have to be mixed up, things have to be changed, or our kids are just going to just be in a really bad position. So for those of you, all those of you who signed up online tonight, welcome. We're glad you're here. And at our board meeting Tuesday night, they said, hey, listen, you've given them a long enough break. Let's get back to school. So I have 2 required reading articles for you to pick up on your way out tonight. For those of you online, they're under tonight's class. The first is kind of an article. I don't know if Troy will talk about it tonight or not, but as we talked about critical race theory last semester, so many parents came forth and said, I'm trying to figure out what is in the curriculum at my school. I've sent 4 emails, 5 emails. They won't answer me. Are they legally required to? What's the situation on my kid's curriculum? There is a Ohio lawmaker that has put forward a bill to, it's called the Curriculum Transparency Bill. And I've got an article you can pick up on your way from Mr. Bill Roll, who's our treasurer. Bill, will you raise your hand? Let's give Bill a round of applause. Thank you. And how about a round of applause for Betty Overstreet, working her extra, our executive director. Our producer, Jay Grunke's in the back on the board tonight. And our board member, Joe Platt, is with us. And as is John O'Neill, who handles our 20-minute classes. So another interesting article, I got an email from Vivek Ramaswamy on, I guess it was Monday morning, and he had a big editorial in the Wall Street Journal on Monday called Slow the Spread, Speeding It May Be Safer. It's a worthwhile read. This will be in the back for you too when you leave also. Vivek's wife is a doctor, so she wrote the article with him. I think it'll be a different outlook than you've seen, so I encourage you to read it. Let me see. Other than that, I just wanted to introduce Michael Connaughton, who's with us tonight. He's from the Ohio Liberty Coalition. Let's give him a round of applause. So welcome, and just so this last year, Michael and I, we were all around the state with protests, critical race events, talking to legislators, talking to parents, and we both kind of came to the conclusion that, hey, these districts that have problems in their schools, we got to get the kids other options. And Michael said, let's do a class on the backpack bill. So I'm going to have him talk about that and introduce our speaker tonight. Michael, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks everybody for coming. Thank you everyone who's online too. My name is Michael Connaughton. I'm a proud American, a freedom fighter. I'm saved by the blood of Jesus. I'm a born again Christian. I'm a proud Republican. And I'm an even more proud supporter of President Donald J. Trump. I've knocked on thousands of doors around Southwest Ohio for Republican candidates and for organizations like Americans for Prosperity and Concerned Veterans for America. trying to get conservative constitutional candidates and principals in our schools and those kind of candidates elected. But everything changed for me on November 20th, 2020. I'm sorry, November 3rd, 2020, when the communists stole the election from we the people and Donald J. Trump, our great president. Shortly after that, my friend Linda Caudill, who's here tonight, came to me with an idea to start a political action group, which we called the Ohio Freedom Coalition, focused on three main areas: election integrity, lobbying, and education. Election integrity has taken a bit of a backseat to the other two. The lobbying is focused mainly on three bills. House Bill 327, which Dan and I and Linda and other people here tonight have focused on quite a bit. That's the anti-critical race theory bill. The second bill is HB 248, which is the medical freedom bill, which we got a little bit of relief today from the Supreme Court on. But we also could have done a little better if Brett Kavanaugh would have come through for us on the hospital end. And then the third bill is what we're going to talk to you about tonight. It's House Bill 290. It's the backpack bill. And it's where basically, in a nutshell, and our speaker's going to talk about it in a little bit, it's basically where the money follows the child around wherever they decide to go to school. So just to give you a little bit of background on how Dan and I got involved in this opportunity tonight, Dan came to me and Linda in the spring last year with an idea to do school board protests. And the first one we did was out at Nagel Middle School in Anderson Township. It was in May. And because of that, we basically got the ball rolling out there. People started to learn about critical race theory being taught in the schools. And the end result is that we got 4 candidates elected to the school board. We took over that school board. And we also had victories with the Educational Service Center. Chrissy Heeg is here tonight. She got elected. And give her a hand. Yeah. And we also have the dynamic duo from Lakota who got elected, along with the incumbent on Lakota, Linda O'Connor. We've got my buddy Isaac Adi and my other friend Darby Bodie. So give them a hand. So folks, the point of all of this is to get active, because the other side is very active. I'm not a military guy. I didn't fight in a foreign war, but I enlisted in the war that we're fighting now, where the enemy is within. And it's going to take a lot of action on all of our parts. So we got a prime opportunity tonight to help take back our school system. They are ruthless, the other side. That's their advantage over us. They'll do anything to win. And they've got the media backing them up, lying for them, censoring us. But we've got 2 major advantages over them. There's more of us than there are of them. And number 2, we've got God on our side, and there's nothing he can't do. So I'm urging everyone here to get involved, run for school board, run for city council, get your petition signed, go knock on some doors, help somebody else win, run yourself, but get involved. And tonight we've got an awesome opportunity with the backpack bill. And here to tell us about it is our speaker, Troy Mcintosh, the executive director of the Ohio Christian Education Network, which is an affiliation of the Center for Christian Virtue. Troy?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the invitation to speak with you tonight. I'm here because I believe we are in an educational crisis in the state of Ohio, and hundreds of thousands of students are suffering as a result. My background is in school administration. I was a school administrator at Worthington Christian School on the north side of Columbus. I was there for 27 years. I was a principal for 16, and the last 8, I served as head of school. I never would have imagined that I would have done anything outside of Worthington Christian. That was my life's work, and I loved being there. I loved watching students grow up from the time they were in kindergarten until the time they graduated, and watching them, come back and visit later on and find out what they're doing in their lives, what they're doing for a career, how their family's going. That is incredibly fulfilling work. I never would have imagined I would have done anything else, except for the fact that the position that I moved to in June as executive director of the Ohio Christian Education Network did 2 things. It brought me full circle back to my career. My first job out of college was actually in the State House. I worked as a fellow for at the time it was the minority caucus. It was the Republicans were in the minority at the time. I left that to go back to graduate school and start a career in education. So I was at WC in the interim, and I got to know Aaron Baer, who is our president at CCV, while I was head of school at Worthington Christian. Just prior to me meeting, we had been meeting with some heads of school, of Christian schools in Ohio, and the conversation turned toward all the things that, as a matter of public policy, Christian schools were facing. And as we talked, we realized we need to have a voice in the State House on behalf of Christian schools and Christian school students. And we need a lobbyist. And it was not more than a couple months later, Aaron Baer walks into my office, and they had just begun the Ohio Christian Education Network with the purpose of being a representation to Christian schools throughout the state in the State House. And as I got to know Aaron over a couple of years serving on their leadership council and so forth, I saw how effective CCV and OSIN were in representing Christian schools. And so this position is probably the only position I would have ever left Worthington Christian for, because I saw the unique and important opportunities that we had to make a difference in the lives of Ohio students. I assume you're interested in the same thing, and that's why you're here tonight. And so what I want to do tonight is to share with you what I believe is one of the greatest and most transformational opportunities we have in Ohio to change the course of education that our kids are receiving. And I want to invite each of you to be a part of that, whether you're in person here or online. Thanks for joining us and listening tonight. So I want to present to you House Bill 290. It's also called the Backpack Bill. That's our branding. This was an initiative that came out of OSIN. OSIN, Ohio Christian Education Network, is just the short version of that. It came out of that and our recognition that the primary problem, and there are many, it's a complex problem, so I don't want to be reductionist and say this is the only issue. But one of the primary problems that our students are facing in Ohio is the lack of choice and lack of educational freedom that parents have on where their kids go to school. All right, the system is broken. The current system doesn't work. That's not to say that there aren't good teachers in the current government system. There are. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of administrators that I would trust with, my life. The problem isn't the individual teachers and administrators. The problem is the system that they're working in is broken because it is a monopoly where there are no forces, no incentives outside of the bureaucracy to do anything on behalf of students. The system functions to serve itself, not necessarily the students. And that's what we believe we need to break. And we believe we have an opportunity to do it through the use of Backpack Bill. So let me just lay a little bit of context on this. The issue that we're facing right now and why the system is broken is the teachers' unions essentially control what is going on in so many districts. There is a monopoly and a lack of competition that takes place in our school system. Now, there is not any enterprise where we would say yeah, a monopoly is a good idea, right? When there are no market forces at work, there's no external incentive to improve your product. And so you can only rely on the goodwill of individuals so far, especially when the system is working against them. It's this lack of competition that is causing problem. It's what so many of you may have experienced when trying to speak with your local school district about whatever issue it may be. And you feel a lack of responsiveness, or you wonder why aren't our voices being heard? That directly stems from this lack of competition. And hundreds of thousands of students in Ohio are stuck in schools that they would prefer not to be there. If there were other options available to them that were practical, that were financially feasible, they would immediately go to that. As a matter of fact, I'll share some data later. Almost a third of students nationwide, well, I should say over half of students nationwide, when polled, and their parents were polled, would choose a non-compulsory school, a non-government school, as their first choice for schooling for their kid. And yet only about 13% of students attend those type of schools. And so there's this huge desire for options, and yet so many students are stuck in a compulsory system. And that causes a significant problem. One of the primary issues is too much power rests in the hands of the state when they both compel education and they control the philosophical grounding and what is contained in that education. That is too much power. They shouldn't be able to do both. That's what we're trying to break. If they're going to compel education, then they need to give students the option to find the best fit for them, okay? But that's just one of the forces that is at work here, this lack of accountability, this lack of market forces, lack of competition. There's also been, and you guys have talked about this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time about this because I'm sure you've had other speakers that have done a much better job speaking on this than I would. But there has been an infiltration of what I'll call woke nihilism. All right, and I'm going to put the emphasis on nihilism and not just on woke, because you guys have all heard about woke ideology, right? I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. What I want to do is point out the nihilistic outcomes that come from that ideology. It is an ideology that leads to the diminution of meaning, the diminution of purpose, the diminution of anything transcendent in a student's life. And it's a cynical, nihilistic ideology that says the primary relationship between people is one of oppressor and oppressed, right? And that is toxic. That's a toxic sociology. For that to be the primary, and that's not to say, please hear me, I am not here to say there is no oppression in the world. Of course there is. There are real victims in the world, okay? I'm not here to dispute that. But when that becomes the primary ideology, the defining factor of a relationship between people and our sociology, it leads to a nihilistic outcome for students. And that is what is becoming the framework for so many of our students' a worldview. They see the world through that lens and they can't see anything outside of that. That's why when we try to talk to them about other options, it's like we're talking from a different language. We're losing the worldview battle on that. And that's led to significant issues for us. It's led to what I'd call, and I beat this drum all the time, we have a serious epistemological problem in our educational system. Now, when I say epistemology, all I mean by that is the study of knowledge, knowing what knowledge is, what constitutes knowledge. How do we find knowledge? How do we know what's true, right? How do we know what is worth learning? We have no idea how to answer that today. When you look at post-secondary education, colleges and universities in the United States, the epistemological crisis has ripped apart the greatest university system in the world. Universities no longer have any idea what is worth studying. That's why you see this proliferation of all these areas of study that you wonder, what's the worth? What's the value of that, right? And I see a lot of questions. I'll definitely try. I'll save time for questions at the end because I definitely want to give you guys a chance to respond. And it leads to, if they don't know what is worth studying, then nothing is worth studying. And everything goes back to, well, what do they know? Everything becomes a power play, right? That's a primary function of postmodernism. When oppression is all you know as a defining trait between people, and you have no idea what's worth studying, what you are studying can only be viewed through that lens. That's why it's nihilistic. That's why it's causing all kinds of problems. It's ripped the soul out of education, not just in Ohio, but across the United States. We are educating students, but we aren't giving them any purpose behind it. We aren't giving them any value or meaning behind it, right? And so it's led to the kind of things that are at the bottom of the page, right? It's led to a significant decrease in academic performance, right? When you look at test scores across our state, they aren't encouraging at all, particularly coming after a year and a half of so many school closures, remote learning, and so many other things that just added on top of the already existing crisis that was there. I'm from Columbus, right? I'm from a suburb of Columbus. We are working, one of the projects that OSIN is working on is a school planting project. So we're committed to starting Christian schools across the state of Ohio, particularly in underserved areas that don't currently have access to a quality Christian school. One of those areas is on the west side of Columbus in a neighborhood called the Hilltop. The Hilltop's the murder capital of Columbus. I'm not sure what the Cincinnati corollary is, but imagine what that neighborhood in Cincinnati would be like. That's the neighborhood we're working at in Columbus. We have a coalition of 8 churches that are working to start a school there. Columbus City Schools, the most recent test results, 4 out of 5 third graders couldn't pass a third grade reading test. 80%. There's a crisis going on in our state. Our kids are being destroyed. When we were meeting at one of the sponsored churches this summer doing some planning work, and as we were doing it, we were looking across the street, and across the street was the neighborhood school, the Columbus Public School for the Hilltop, Burroughs Elementary. And while we were meeting, we walked out, and they had workers that were getting the school ready for kids to come back to school. Okay, thankfully they were coming back, at least at that point, in person. They were painting on the front rainbow on the bus turnaround loop, celebrating LGBTQ issues. Right? They were celebrating one of the very things that's ripping their neighborhood apart. It's fatherlessness. It's lack of families that have both a mother and a father in them. It's killing that neighborhood, and the public school is celebrating one of the very things that's ripping that neighborhood apart. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to give those kids an option to be able to say, there's a better way. There's an education that leads to hope. There's an education that leads to meaning and purpose, and that is what you have been created for. And so that's a big part of what we're doing. The second, you see the spiritual malaise in schools. If you spend any time around youth today, you get a real sense of that. If you look at teen suicide rates, they are skyrocketing right now. And it's not even teens. There are cases that are even younger than teens. Our kids are losing what it means to be a person, right? And there are all kinds of reasons for that, but so many of them are coming from what they're being taught in schools. And if it's not being taught, it's at least the school's affirming what they're learning through somewhere else, popular culture, whatever. And so this is kind of the milieu that we're working in. We're in a crisis, and dramatic action needs to be taken. Okay? Parents and voters have expressed repeatedly the desire to be able to choose their own school. Okay, the American Federation for Children and Real Clear Political Research have done a number of studies on this, and they've done them over periods of time. Okay, and this is what they found in their most recent polling, which came out in September of 21. Parents around the state were asked this question: generally speaking, would you say you support or oppose the concept of school choice, which gives parents the right to use tax dollars dedicated or designated for their child's education to send their child to the public or private school which best serves their needs? 74% of parents across the country said yes to that. 74%. Look at the breakdown, right? This is going to be this is so often couched as a conservative liberal issue. It's not, right? It may be conservatives. We may think we may believe, and rightly, it fits into a conservative perspective, free market approach, right? Competition and so forth. But there are almost as many people on the left side of the spectrum who support this. Look at the figure down here. 70% of Democratic parents, rank and file Democrats, support the idea of educational freedom. But there's a huge disconnect between rank and file and lawmakers because we will not get a single Democrat to vote for this in the General Assembly. And it's not even because they don't believe in it, because I know at least one state senator who's a graduate of one of our member schools. We represent 120 member schools across the state. She's a graduate of one of our schools. Meeting with the principal from her alma mater, she said, oh yeah, I love the idea of school choice. I'm never going to vote for it. Right? So what we need are some courageous lawmakers to stand up and say, I'm willing to stand up against the resistance that's going to come. But most importantly, we need to carry them the message, your constituency wants this. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, your constituency wants it. And look at whether it's race and ethnicity or party ID, it doesn't matter. There is overwhelming support for the idea of educational freedom, for the idea that the state's tax dollars should follow the child in his backpack to whatever school he or she chooses to go to. Not politically expedient, because a huge part of her funding support will come from teachers' unions, and the teachers' unions are adamantly opposed to this, right? If you've been following the news, you know that there was a lawsuit filed just this last week by a coalition of public school districts across the state to challenge the state constitutionality of our current school choice program, Ed Choice Scholarships. Are you familiar with the Ed Choice program? I'll talk about it a bit later, but there is a huge lobby from public school interests, not from public school students' interests, from the system's interests to oppose school choice in Ohio. Parents would choose other options if available. This is what I mentioned earlier. If it was your decision and you could select any type of K-12 school, what type of school would you select in order to obtain the best education for your child? Only a third of them said they would choose the public school. Now, this bill is not designed to be anti-public school, because you know what? Those kids that want to choose their public school, we want them to thrive and flourish. We care about them as much as any student who's homeschooled or attends a private school, right? We need them to be good community members. We need them to be good parents. We need them to have the skills that it takes to be a productive member of society. We care about them too. This is not an anti-public school bill. It's an anti-public system bill. We love the kids that are there. We want them to be best served. And we believe this, I'll talk about this later, why we believe it serves their interests as much as students who choose to leave elsewhere. Let me just give you a little bit of background about Ohio's current choice programs. There are really 4 of them, right? In Ohio, students are able to open enroll, public school students are able to open enroll in districts outside the district in which they reside. So if you live in Cincinnati Public Schools, the law would allow you to open enroll in another district. However, each district is allowed to choose whether they will take open enrolled students. No district in the state is permitted to keep a student from leaving, but they are allowed to not accept students, okay? They can also choose to accept only students from contiguous adjoining districts, or they can choose to be statewide open enrollment. Now, let me show you a map of what this looks like. So if you look here, the dark green, the light green districts, or I thought I had a light here. There we go. The light green districts. You see the majority of school districts on the state are open enrollment from any district. They will take a student no matter where they're from. Technically, if a student lived in this district up here, he could open enroll down here. Now, we all know that's not going to happen, but they could, okay? Districts have an incentive to accept students because the money follows them when they come. So there's a financial incentive for school districts to accept open enrolled students. These orangish districts are districts that only accept students from contiguous districts. But look at these dark green. What do you notice about them? Where are they located? Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, Toledo, Cleveland, Youngstown, Canton. It's not even really Democratic areas. It's suburban districts blocking urban students from open enrolling anywhere. Now, here's the irony. It's these suburban districts that love to talk, and I'm not going to get into discussion of the idea of systemic racism. It's not the point of my talk tonight. But if you want to talk about a systemically racist policy, it's this right here. The very districts that make such a big deal about opposing systemic racism are doing this because they don't want urban kids from these inner city schools open enrolling in their district. All right? This is the most racist policy, educational policy we have in Ohio right now. There are also a couple other programs, some scholarship programs. I'm going to talk about, there are 3 of them. One is called the Autism Scholarship. And this is a scholarship that's available to any student who's been diagnosed on the autism spectrum, can receive up to, I think it's $20,000, maybe a little bit more than $20,000, to receive services for their autism. They can take that to private school and receive services there. They can take it to independent providers, private providers. The same thing with the John Peterson Scholarship. Those are for students with defined learning disabilities. They can receive a John Peterson Scholarship, and the scholarship amount depends on what their diagnosis is. It can range anywhere from about $1,500, again, up to about $20,000. And they can take that to a private school and use it for special ed services at a private school, or they can take it to a private provider and do the same thing there. Okay, the final and the largest of Ohio's choice programs is the Ed Choice Scholarship Program. This is a scholarship that is given to students based on 2 criteria. The traditional Ed Choice Scholarship Program is given to any student who is assigned to a low-performing school. All right, so it's a long set of criteria for what determines whether a school is low-performing. But if a student is assigned to that school, then they are eligible for an Ed Choice Scholarship. They're also eligible for a scholarship if their family income is 250% or less of the federal poverty level. So for a family of 4, I believe that's going to be around $70,000. Right now, about half of Ohio's students fall into one of those 2 categories. So about half are eligible for an Ed Choice Scholarship. Now, in one way, that's sad, because that means half of our students are either living in a low-income family or assigned to a failing school, right? The upside is half of Ohio students are eligible for this scholarship. The scholarship is valued at $5,500 for kindergarten to 8th grade, $7,500 for 9 through 12. And they can take that and they could use it at any chartered non-public school across the state. Now, most private schools are chartered, okay? Probably 90% of private schools in Ohio are chartered. That just means they've agreed to abide by certain operating standards. The school I came from was chartered. There were no compromises that came with being chartered. There were no, the state didn't have any control over a curriculum or anything. It was largely benign kind of operational kind of things, record keeping, that kind of stuff. But they could use it only at chartered non-publics. And that's been really good. We have just over 50,000 students in Ohio right now using an Ed Choice Scholarship. Okay. And I know you can't see this, so this is a little low, but I kind of circled Ohio right here. This is a state ranking put out by the Educational Freedom Index. Okay, and this is came out of a group of researchers from the University of Arkansas. But they rank all 50 states based on how much educational freedom that state offers to its students. Okay, and you can see right here, Ohio actually does fairly well. Ohio back in 2000 was ranked 18th. Last year in 2021, we've moved up to 8th. And that's largely because we've been able to, and OSIN has been one of the primary movers in this, has really worked hard to expand the school choice programs in Ohio. There have been a number of wins regarding charter schools, regarding the Ed Choice Scholarship Program, and other things. So we've moved up, okay? Now, we have a long way to go because there are still half of Ohio students aren't eligible for school choice, and we are going to work to eliminate that. Despite this, and this is fairly recent, this move up the ladder is fairly recent, Ohio still ranks 31st among states in student academic performance, okay? And it's not as though those 30 states ahead of us are covering themselves in academic glory, right? They're struggling also because the United States still ranks 30th in the world in math, 19th in science, okay? So there are issues that we have in public school, not public schools, in the educational system that we have in Ohio. So let me just talk to you and give you an explanation of what House Bill 290 is, where it's at, and what we hope to do with it. The backpack bill essentially will offer educational freedom to every student in the state. So any student who wishes to can opt in to the program. They do that by completing an application with the treasurer. We intentionally went with the treasurer's office rather than through ODE because we've seen how ODE has managed the Ed Choice Scholarship and it's been unbelievably frustrating. So we are putting the hands of administration of the program into the treasurer's office. We've had a number of discussions with the treasurer's office. He's very supportive of the idea. Treasurer Sprague is, Ohio Treasurer Robert Sprague is very supportive of the idea and is really interested in being a part of this. But any family who chooses, well, every student in the state would have the ability to choose either their local public school, a public school that they open enroll in, a community school. That's what Ohio calls charter schools. The rest of the country calls them charter schools. In Ohio, we call them community schools. Or they could use it for any private school tuition or homeschooling expenses, okay? They would simply notify the treasurer that we would like to opt into the backpack program, and the treasurer would set up an educational savings account, an ESA, for that particular student. And it would be funded $5,500, the same as the Ed Choice Scholarship, $5,500 if the student was K through 8th grade, $7,500 if the student was in high school. And that would occur before school, and then the family could use that for approved educational expenses, all right? And obviously the treasurer will have safeguards in place for fraud prevention and so forth. You're obviously, so it's like an HSA. It will spend, if you have one of those, it would spend a lot like that. You know, you can't go out and buy a new car with your HSA in the same way you can't do that with your ESA. But you could use it for educationally related expenses. You could also use it for educational summer camps. Suppose you wanted to take music lessons during the summer. You could use it for that if there was money left over in your ESA. You could use it for tutoring. If your child's struggling in math and you need to pay for some after-school tutoring, you could use it for that as well. But that's the idea. And then any money that's left over at the end of the year, you get to keep half of it in the ESA. You can roll it over into the ESA for the following year. Half goes back to the state. Okay, so we wanted to provide some kind of incentive for families to shop around and not just spend money recklessly. There's an incentive because they can roll it 50% of it over. If there's money left in a student's account when the student graduates, a family could roll that over into a 529 account for college savings. So there's an incentive built in there as well. We're really excited about this concept. Has anybody heard of a person named Corey Deangelis? Anybody familiar with Corey? Okay. Corey is the leading proponent for educational freedom in the United States. If this is a topic that's of interest from you and you're on Twitter, I highly recommend you follow Corey Deangelis' account. He was interviewed by Hugh Hewitt this week on The Interview. It's a Hugh Hewitt's podcast. And if you're a podcast person, that's a great one to listen to because he spent half an hour talking about the research basis for why educational freedom works, and it works for students. But there were multiple times in that podcast, they referred to Ohio's backpack bill. They referred to our bill. It's kind of cool. I felt that was exciting. They referred to it as the gold standard for educational freedom in the country. And so we're excited about the possibilities that it entails. Right now, it sits in the House Finance Committee. It's House Bill 290. And we are expecting our first hearings. Well, we were expecting our first, the sponsor testimony to take place this last week in January. But we had a bombshell drop in the Capitol this week. If you notice, the state Senate and the General Assembly and congressional districts were ruled unconstitutional. Well, the General Assembly districts were waiting on the congressional ruling to come out. There's a good chance that'll be. So that sent the General Assembly into disarray right now because everybody, right now, they're all up for election this fall and they don't know what their districts are going to be. And they've still got to do filing, where they're going to have to push back the filing deadlines. We expect that's going to consume a lot of legislative time over the next couple of weeks. So we're still hoping by early February, we'll begin the process of having hearings in the House Finance Committee. Scott Olslager is the chair of that committee. He has agreed to do this. Speaker Robert Cupp has also agreed to this, and they're both interested in holding the hearings. There are 33 members on the House Finance Committee, 22 Republicans, 11 Democrats. Like I said, we won't get a single Democratic vote in that committee. So we have 22 Republicans and we need to convince 17 of them to pass it out of committee. So we've been whipping those members over the last couple months, and we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to get the votes to get it to the floor. All right, and then once it gets to the floor, it's a whole nother set of things that we need to work on. Our goal would be to have this passed by the end of this General Assembly, which would be not June of 23, right? That's when the next budget would be up. The next budget cycle would be in place. They'd be able to fit this into the new budget cycle. So this is kind of an extended process. This isn't something that we know is going to pass in March, and while we would love for that to be, it's probably not realistic for that to be the case. But that's kind of the timeline that we're working on. And so what we need to do in the meantime is send a very loud and clear message to our lawmakers that this is something parents are asking for. We need for them to feel that 74% of parents that want educational freedom for their children. Okay, that's what we'll talk about in just a little bit. But some of the benefits of school choice, and this is where I could talk for 2 hours just on this. There is so much research that is being done that shows benefits of educational freedom. This is just some of them. Okay, this is where if you want to dive into this more, Corey Deangelis is the person to go to. He's part of a group out of the University of Arkansas. There are some others. John Wolf is down there. He's done a lot of it as well, but it's spread to others as well. But there are a number of people doing research on this. The parent satisfaction rates for people that are enrolled in a choice program are more than double what satisfaction rates of parents in public schools are. Now, we sometimes get into this idea that the only measure for educational success is our test scores, right? But that is such a narrow view of what education is. That's a reductionist view of what the human person is. Right? The human person is not comprised of his test scores, right? There are so many other areas. There's social aspect. There's artistic aspects that standardized tests can never do. There's spiritual development and growth that standardized tests can never access. But parents know, right? Is my child developing as a whole person? That's why parent satisfaction rates are so important, because the parents know, is my child thriving and flourishing in this school, or is he not? Right? Other areas, higher educational attainment. We know that students that have been enrolled in school choice programs attain higher levels of education later on. They're more likely to go to college. They're more likely to pursue graduate degrees. We also know that the public school academic performance, I talked a little bit about that already. It's troubling, to say the least. There's this sense that there's a greater efficiency in the market. One of the things, it's fun, ironically, one of the things that the lawsuit against the EdChoice program that I mentioned was dropped this week. Their primary claim is based on a phrase in the state constitution. They're not challenging it on US constitutional grounds because they know they can't. That's already been settled case law for 2 decades, right? So they're challenging it on state constitutional grounds. The phrase in the state constitution that says the state must secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools, okay? And they're basing their entire case on the idea that the current system under EdChoice is not thorough and efficient. And yet, when you talk about markets, any kind of market, whether it's the market for automobiles, the market for healthcare, the market for winter clothes, the most efficient markets are the ones where individuals have the ability to make choice at the micro level, right? That's what the backpack bill is doing. There is no, or I should say, there is a stunted ability to do that in Ohio right now, to make educational decisions on the micro level. So many are just trapped in the school that they're assigned to based on their zip code, right? So we have this, the backpack is a better solution to the problem of thorough and efficient than the system that they're advocating for, okay? There are so many more. One of the things, here's one of the key pieces of research. There have been 27 studies that have been done on the effects of public school students who remain in their public school after a choice program is introduced into their area. Okay, so we know some students are, even after choice is introduced, some students are going to continue to choose a public school, and that's great. If their parents deem that to be the best fit for them, go at it and let's give them the best public school we can have. 27 studies have been done on the effects of choice on those students who remain in public school. 25 of them show a positive impact on those students. As a matter of fact, one study showed that the academic performance of those students who chose their public school increased by a greater rate than if they had put a highly qualified teacher in their classroom. Now, if you're in education, you'll know the gold standard for what's the best thing you can do to help to improve a student's academic performance. The research for 5 decades has been put a high quality teacher in their classroom. The effect of choice on those students is greater than that. That's why we believe this is good public policy, right? This is the best approach for a student no matter where they choose. It's not the best for the government system. We don't care about system. We don't care about the private school system. We care about students, and we want to give them the opportunity to have the best choice in their schooling. So let me talk about just some grassroots advocacy, some ways that you can become a part of making this change in Ohio. We are sponsoring backpack bill parties. Okay, so think of oh shoot, what are those baskets? Longaberger baskets, right? Think of those. They're kind of out of style, and I don't even know if Longaberger's still around. But if you've ever been a part of those, these are parties that moms and dads will host in their home and invite up to 10 families, friends, neighbors, church congregants, work colleagues, whatever, to come to their home, hear about how they can be backpack parties. So our goal is to decentralize this and really have grassroots efforts all across the state. The very first backpack bill party in the state is being held tomorrow night here in Cincinnati. Okay, and our goal over the next 12 months is to have hundreds of these across the state, multiplying, over and over again among themselves. So the way this works is, if you could hold in the back, I have 5, well, actually I have one here. In the back table, we have 5 of these backpack party host kits. Okay, now I didn't have anything to do with this. I mean, I had the idea, but our graphics design team and marketing team did all this. But this is the branding. The yellow backpack is the branding for the backpack bill. We want yellow backpacks to be seen by our lawmakers every time they walk in to the State House. It's called a school bus, yeah. So if you are interested in hosting a party, Dan has graciously purchased 5 of these to make available to anybody who would commit to hosting a party tonight, and you could take it home, and everything you need to host the party is in this packet. So it comes with a folder here. It comes with a kind of a host guide that'll walk you step by step through the party, and obviously you can tailor this to your own needs and so forth. But it's got a step-by-step way to do this. There are trivia, there are games that'll be played. We have some prizes that we'll have in here for trivia game winners. There are a number of videos that you can just simply connect your laptop and play them off of our website, our YouTube site, and it explains the bill. They'll hear firsthand testimony of parents and students across the state who have benefited from educational freedom. And you'll hear from former Supreme Court Justice. You'll hear from Ben Douglas, who's the parent who's helping us start the school on the west side of Columbus. And then it culminates in I know we're there. It culminates in asking each of the attenders to fill out 2 of these, at least 2 of these. Okay, and these are postcards. Obviously, they match the backpack. But this is what we want to flood the State House with. When we walk in to meet with a representative, we want to see their desk covered with these things. And we already know, there are several lawmakers who said they're going to designate space in their office where they could just plaster their wall with these. They're just postcards, come with stamps, and you can ask attenders to simply write their state representative and write their state senator, and put a personal note on the difference that educational freedom would make for your family, or maybe your grandkids, or maybe your neighbor's family, right? If your kids are grown or whatever. But just a personal note, and send it to your state rep and state senator. That will make an incredible difference. These kind of things sway people. I mean, that's what reps are just, they care about, for the most part, they care about what for their own sake, they care about what their constituency wants.
Where are these schools that are already implementing the backpack model? I mean, it sounds like you're advocating to have it done, and yet apparently.
Well, again, there are 50. Yeah. Yep.
Well, the question is, where do you get this data? Are there schools that are implementing?
Yeah. So again, the current school choice programs in Ohio, we have 50,000 students who use an Ed Choice scholarship. Okay. And those students are, my school had, the school, Worthington Christian, out of our 950 students, probably 120 of them used the Ed Choice Scholarship to come to our school. But any chartered non-public school in the state can accept a student that uses that Ed Choice Scholarship to attend their school. Okay. So the backpack bill essentially extends Ed Choice. Essentially, it's a different system. The Ed Choice is a voucher, backpack is an ESA. It's a little bit different, but it essentially extends the current choice program to every student. Okay. Yeah, the Ed Choice program has been around since 2003 or 4, something like that. So the other things you can do I have postcards in the back along with stamps. You don't even need a stamp. We'll give you the stamp. If you want to grab a postcard, we've got a display. You can even scan. If you don't know who your state rep or state senator is, you can scan your phone on that and find out who it is and send a postcard to your lawmakers. You can also post about it on social media. We're using just the hashtag backpack bill. So if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, on whatever, and you want to talk about that, if you want to forward information, if you go to our website on backpackbill.com, you'll have access to some of the research that I talked about. If you want to go to that, click the link, post it on your Twitter feed or post it on your Facebook account, and tag it with backpack bill. That would be incredibly helpful. If you want to write a letter to your editor in support of these things, I just had 2 weeks ago, I was published in the Cleveland Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com for an op-ed that I wrote. And again, that is powerful ways of persuading. We want people to understand backpack bill because we know if they understand it, they're going to put pressure on lawmakers to support it. And then finally, you can visit a lawmaker, right? If you want to come visit your lawmaker in the Capitol, you can visit them in the district, which is great. If you want to come to Columbus, we'll help arrange that for you so that you can come by yourself or even with a handful of other people and spend 10 or 15 minutes just talking about what educational freedom could mean for your family. Incredibly powerful ways. Okay. I know there were a lot of questions. I saw hands poking up all the time. So now's a great time to start taking some of
Okay,
those.
here's one right here. Would you say,
My name's Randy.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
And all the other people here. Thank you for coming. Of course, I believe that education is a service. Very similar in the marketplace. You mentioned the marketplace has many other services. But the idea is pushed that public schools are more than a service. What I mean, they are promoted as being something patriotic. In other words, if you try to take your child out of a public school, well, why are you doing that? I mean, the public school, that's for the community, and you're being patriotic if you support the public school. And so how do we counter that argument that's made? Because it's almost like a sacred cow,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my first response is what's more patriotic than giving families the ability to choose what's best for their kid? Right. So that'd be my first choice. But you're right. There are, particularly in parts of the state, and what we've noticed is rural lawmakers really struggle with this because of that reason. They are often rural communities, smaller towns, that the public school is so embedded in the culture of the town that they have a hard time seeing beyond that. And what I would say is, you know what? If you're satisfied with your public school, stay there. If we have districts where no kids leave, that's great. That tells me that district is serving their kids well, and more power to them. We want that school district will be fully funded for every kid who chooses to attend there. But that ain't going to be the case everywhere in the state. And why would you hold back other kids who want to be able to have a better option, a different option for them, just because you're satisfied with where you are?
We have a question right back here.
Hi, my name is Chrissy. My question is, have you tested the temperature of the finance committee as far as what it looks like if they're going to support this bill or if
Yep.
they're going to hold it up?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, we've been whipping finance committee members for the last couple months. Whipping means meeting with them, pressing for their vote and seeing where they stand. Okay, so every week when we're a policy meeting, we take out our whip sheets and get a count. There are, I say we're cautiously optimistic because most of the, like I said, we need 17 votes. We have 22 Republican members. We can have 5 defectors. And I'm cautiously optimistic. Every member that we've talked to so far has either said they support it or they're generally supportive, but they want to see, they need more details. I get that. I mean, I get that aspect of they're at least going to wait till committee hearings so they can hear testimony before they commit to a position. As I'm optimistic that once we get through committee, Corey Deangelis is coming to Ohio to testify on this. Marty Lukens from Ed Choice out of Indianapolis is coming to testify on this. Senator Rucker, who was the sponsor of the Hope Scholarship in West Virginia, which is essentially West Virginia's version of backpack bill. And they just passed it last year. It goes into effect next year. She's coming to testify. So we have some really, really powerful people coming. But we're cautiously optimistic and we're hopeful, cautiously optimistic we'll have enough votes to get it to the floor.
We have another question right here.
My name's Barbara, and I live in a little burb that has a small district. And my question is about open enrollment. You had made the statement that it's racist to not be willing to take students from other districts in. And my concern about that is that in the little burb that I live in, we pay a premium for our real estate property values based on the schools. And I'm telling you, it's almost a cult. Our school is a god to a lot of people that move in. They think that it's just going to make all the difference in the world in their lives if they can just get a house in our community and send their children to that school. Okay, that being said, there's a big push now that our burb is racist because we're not inclusive of urban children. Just whoever wants to sign up can come to that school. So I wonder if you have an objection to open enrollment that's not based on race, but it's based on finances, that anybody can move to our burb as long as they can pay their bills and enroll their student in the schools.
Yeah, and this is, I'm not going to press the open enrollment question very far because I think it's like 1% of the school choice issue, right? It only solves a very small portion of the school choice issue. But one of the problems that we have is that educational performance is tied unbelievably close to the zip code you live in, right? And there, again, that's a complex issue that there's probably not, my intent isn't to speak to that particular issue tonight. But the children who the systems are failing the most are the ones in districts that are most underperforming, and those tend to be low-income districts. And so the problem with Ohio, the issue of property values is a real one, right? The problem is the way that Ohio currently funds its public schools is not conducive to open enrollment for that reason. That's why if Ohio really wants to go to open enrollment, they need to change how they do their school funding and get away from local property taxes and more towards state funding, less reliance on local taxes to avoid that issue. It's a disincentive right now to open enrollment the way we do funding.
Question right here.
Hello, my name is Greg. A comment about this gentleman's comment about the schools inferring they weren't being patriotic because they wanted to go. I just recently read a book by Nathaniel Philbrook about the Mayflower. Those 52 people that loaded on that rotten old ship were seeking freedom. When they got here, they pursued freedom. In 1774 and 1775 and 1776, before things got serious, they were being told, if you don't line up, you're not being patriotic. They chose freedom. Those that did the Constitution were choosing freedom. Those that claim to be patriotic ought to support freedom of choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost common sense. I mean, that freedom in choosing for your child's education is inherently superior to a monopolistic system. Forget about educational outcomes, forget about test scores and all that. It is just inherently good to give parents the freedom to choose their schools.
Question right here.
Jeff, I know one question obviously is going to come up is cost. What kind of cost, budget costs would be associated with this?
Yeah, great question. So we will be having 2 fiscal analyses done on this. One will be done by the Legislative Service Commission, LSC, which is part of the state government. They will not do a fiscal analysis until the sub-bill is introduced at our first hearing. So we'll get that fiscal analysis down the road. The fiscal analysis that we do have was done by Marty Lukens, who's a school choice finance guru. He works for Ed Choice out of Indianapolis, not to be confused with the Ed Choice Scholarship Program. It's used to be the old Freeman Foundation out of Indianapolis. They advocate for school choice. What his analysis showed was for every public school student who's currently in public schools and takes up a backpack scholarship and uses it to homeschool or private school, the state actually saves money because the amount of the scholarship is less than the amount that the state is spending to educate that child in the public school. So it was like for every child, it was like $100 to $150 in savings for every public school student who leaves. The cost will be for students who currently homeschool or are already in a private school, because the state's not currently funding those students. The state has been getting a free ride on homeschoolers and private schoolers for too long, right? And so, yeah, and so there would be the additional cost that. So the final cost would depend entirely on the take-up rate of private school students who take up the scholarship.
We have 2 questions online in the back.
One of them was about the cost. I think that's how much does it cost? So we've answered that one. There was a question from somebody listening online. I don't know exactly how to interpret this, but it's where does the money come from and who oversees it to make sure the money is being spent on education? So I think maybe part of that's been answered.
Yeah,
Maybe the
so-
oversight part is what we
So
need.
the money would come from the state's, the foundation money that pays for pupil education in Ohio, right? And it would, the treasurer would, for every student who registers for an ESA, the treasurer would, I think it's July 15th, so shortly after the fiscal year starts, the treasurer would fund those students' ESAs. And then more than likely, what we're encouraging the treasurer to do, and he's definitely pursuing this, is contracting with a third-party vendor to manage the administration of it. So this is what Arizona does. Arizona has a pretty robust, as a matter of fact, Arizona is #1 on that EFI index that I showed you. They have a pretty robust school choice programs there, and they use a vendor called Class Wallet. And so Class Wallet, it would be the one that would manage it. The way it works with Class Wallet, you can set it up however you want. But with Class Wallet, you could either go on to Class Wallet and submit a request for all pre-approved expenses. So if you're writing a tuition check to St. Charles, okay, and you want to write that, that would be a pre-approved expense that would go through, and they would cut a check, and it would go to St. Charles. Or you could, let's say you're homeschooling. It's always, Class Wallet will have like teacher supply and school supply pre-approved things. But sometimes they're going to be, you want to take a field trip to the art museum, right? And that would be under the bill, that would be allowable. You would basically spend out of there and then get reimbursed for it. So Class Wallet and the treasurer would be or Class Wallet, if that may not be the vendor that the treasurer chooses. There are competitors to Class Wallet,
Question right here.
but they would be the ones responsible for oversight.
My name is Kurt. There's been some discussion about the source of funding. So a good portion of the funding for students comes from local property taxes, and the rest comes from state. What is the breakdown of that, and how will this impact the property taxes on?
Yeah,
and
it's a great
whether
question.
taxes from one district property taxes will be sent to another to cover the cost.
Yeah. So the backpack bill, well, say It varies from district to district. Some districts are more reliant on state funding than others. Some are more reliant on local funding. And it's generally corresponds to the amount of wealth in the district. Wealthier districts tend to rely more on local property tax. Poorer districts tend to rely more on state funding. But average across the state, it's 43% state funding, 43% local funding, about 12% federal funding, and then the balance comes from other sources. It could be things like football ticket sales and so forth. So it's about, it's even between state and local. This does not touch local funding at all. If a student chooses to leave their local district, the local district still keeps 100% of that local tax money. So here's the impact of that. The impact of that is the more students who choose to leave, the higher a district's per pupil funding goes up, right? Because if you have 1,000 students, right, and 200 of them leave, those 800 students who remain still have 100% of the local, they still have all of the state funding for those 800 students, plus they have all of the local money that was designated for 1,000 students. So the per pupil revenue actually increases for local districts. So when they complain about you're going to gut us financially, there's a counter to that. You're keeping all of the state money, even though you're no longer, you're keeping all of the local money and federal money.
So we don't want our new school board members to kick out any students, Isaac. Don't get any ideas over there. Okay, here's another question.
Hi, this is John. I've got a question. If this passes, I can assume that there's going to be a lot of student movement. How are they going to allocate seats if, they want to go to a school that's already pretty much full? How does that happen?
Yeah.
And the second one would be a comment that you were talking about the local property taxes versus the state funding. To me, passage of this would allow a better shift to full state funding of
it could. I mean, that could be a long-term.
That could be a long-term
Yeah,
benefit.
because what's going to happen is over time, I would expect that municipalities and districts would adjust their local millage to right size to the number of students that are left in the district, right? If they lose 30% of their students, I would expect that the taxpayers would realize you're only educating 70% of the kids you used to. And I would expect that there would be a taxpayer understanding and so forth. The first question you had, I forget now the first question you had.
Happens when you turn this.
Oh yeah, right.
Question
So-
is, when you turn this flood of students loose, how is it all going
Yeah.
to shake out?
So, at least initially, it would be done the same way that Ed Choice is managed. And that is a private school has the full authority to handle their admissions process. So at Worthington Christian, we accepted some Ed Choice students and we didn't accept others. We applied the same admissions criteria we always have and always will do with non-Ed Choice students or non-backpack students. So there's no interference from the state on the admissions policy of a private school. Now, what we do know is if as many students end up taking a backpack scholarship as we expect, at least over 10 years, we need to ramp up supply, right? Because there won't be enough current private schools to manage it. That's why I was talking about we're interested in planting schools across the state. And I would expect the market would respond. It's not just going to be us that's going to be starting schools. This is like anything. When there's increased demand, the market responds and starts producing more goods. That's what we think is going to happen with schools. It'll take some time, but we expect we would get.
We have time for 2 quick questions.
Hi, I'm Monique. I really appreciate all the hard work being done to address this. I have some notes. I don't like speaking in public. I'm concerned about a lot of things going on in Ohio schools, including this. And I have an article with me published by the Epoch Times called Wi-Fi in Schools, Experimenting with the Next Generation. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the American Academy of Pediatrics and other health experts have been warning for years that children are especially vulnerable to cell phone and Wi-Fi radiation. And Ohio schools have installed powerful radiation emitting industrial routers meant for huge factories. in their buildings as students are being taught on devices now more than ever.
We'll need you to finish your question, okay? Thank you.
Sure. Some schools have also installed 5G. Due to public pressure, other American schools have already reduced Wi-Fi or replaced Wi-Fi with hardwired internet. Have you considered incorporating this kind of thing into your efforts for Ohio students? Thank you.
Well, yeah, again, that's not an issue that's been on our radar, and primarily because we think backpack solves that problem. If the school that your child is assigned to, it has Wi-Fi or other issues, you need to have the ability to leave and find a school that doesn't. I mean, that's what the power of choice does. It provides and responds to market forces. If there are a lot of parents in an area that want what you're asking for, then the market will respond and provide options for that. If nothing else, than homeschooling. Right?
This is the last question we're going to be able to take tonight.
I would expect most private schools in the state to have some kind of wireless system in their school. Mm-hmm.
Hi there. It's lovely to meet you. I'm Lauren.
Hi.
And I just am so enthusiastic about what you're doing.
Good.
This is something we've just been hoping and praying for a long time. I live in Over the Rhine and just get the significance of the need for this in Cincinnati. So I also wanted to let you know that I work with the Freedom Foundation here in Ohio, and we defund teachers unions. And so we're desperately trying to get them out of your way. So it's wonderful to meet you and be here to learn about what you're doing. And I'm going to do my best to defund these teachers unions.
Good. And it's not teachers that we're opposed to. We love teachers, right? There are so many good ones across the state. It's unions and systems that are broken.
Let's thank our speaker for coming from Columbus tonight. Thank you so much. So I know a couple of you had questions, and maybe you can throw them at him when we get done. So Michael and I, who kind of really wanted to have this class, as well as Joe Platt, several people, we've just got a real goal that we want 5 people to agree to, somebody said, don't use the word party. It's kind of stress, a meeting, coffee with your friends, and just expose people to this concept and try to flood the market, get the word out, get people talking about it. Because with a lot of stuff about education, you've seen that the lawmakers up in Columbus, they're really scared to step out of the box. They are really scared they're going to lose their funding. They're not going to get elected. We need all your help. So these backpacks are going to be in the back with this gentleman with the green sweater on, Joe Platt. Would you raise your hand? And I'm just going to ask a couple of you, hopefully 5 of you, to take the step of having a little informational meeting. Anybody online who wants to have a party, remember these backpacks cost, and Empower You is donating the first 5 of them. If you'll agree to have a meeting, you can email us at info@empoweryouamerica.org. And we will make arrangements to send you the kit and get the informational session started. Now, Troy, if somebody wants to have an informational meeting and they're just concerned about it, will there be somebody there that they can kind of talk to?
Yeah,
and
sure.
Yeah.
So anybody in our office would be happy to talk with you and walk you through the process. Corinne Vidalis is our assistant director. I think Corinne was down here.
Corinne was here last semester. Many of you probably met her.
So Corinne or I would be more than happy. Our emails, I'm sorry, I should have put it up there. My email is just troy.mcintosh@ccv.org. Hers is Corinne Vidalis @ccv.org. And we'd be happy to walk you through the process. There are others available who could do it. We just hired our 17th person. CCV just hired their 17th person. So we're continuing to grow, and that's good. To me, that shows there's a pent up need for the kind of things we're doing.
And we'll put Troy's email address on the website, empoweryouamerica.org. And I want to remind you that this is all about getting the word out. So tomorrow by 4 o'clock, anybody who wasn't here tonight can watch the presentation, the great presentation. But let's give him another round. You did a great job. It's so hard to understand. This education stuff is it's so complicated and kind of hard to understand. So you'll be able to watch a replay of this class tomorrow. And a big thanks to Michael Connaughton in the back for helping out too. Let's give him a round of applause. Please consider, have a great month or so before we get our classes going again, and go out tonight and empower you. Thank you.
Yeah.
See, I can't.
You weren't quick enough.
Can't get in her. That's okay.